Genesis 37, New King James Version. Joseph's dream of greatness. Now Jacob dwelt in the land where his father was a stranger, into the land of Canaan. This is the history of Jacob. Joseph began 17 years of old, was feeding the flock with his brothers, and the lad was with his sons of Bilhah and the son of Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought a bad report from them to his father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all of his children, because he was the son of his old age. Also he had made him a tunic of many colors, but then his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all of his brothers. They hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. Now Joseph had a dream, and he had told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. So he said to them, "Please hear my dream, which I have dreamt. There we were binding sheaves of the field, and then behold, my sheaf arose also and stood upright, and indeed your sheaf stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf." And his brothers said to him, "Shall you indeed resign over us, or shall you indeed have dominion over us?" So they hated him even more for his dream and for his words. Then he dreamt still another dream, and told it to his brothers, and said, "Look, I have a dream, another dream, and this time the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bow down to me." So he had told it to his father and to his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamt? Shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come to bow down to the earth before you?" And his brothers envied him, but his father kept this matter in mind. Joseph sold by his brothers. Then his brothers went to feed their father's flock in Shilcam, and Israel said to Joseph, Are not your brothers feeding the flock in Shilcam? Come, and I will send you to them." So he had said to him, "Here I am." Then he said to him, "Please go and see if it is well with your brothers and well with the flocks, and bring back word to me." So he had sent him out to the valley of Harbon, and he had went to Shilcam, and now a certain man found him, and there he was, wandering in the field. And then the man asked him, saying, "What are you seeking?" So he said, "I am seeking my brothers. Please tell me where they are, feeding their flocks." And the man said, "They have departed from here, for I had heard them saying, 'Let us go down to Dothan.'" So Joseph went afar after his brothers. Okay, I lost my spot. Okay, I'm going to go back to 37:15. Now a certain man found him, and there he was wandering in the field. And a man asked him, saying, "What are you seeking?" And he said, "I am seeking my brothers. Please tell me where they are, feeding their flocks." And then a man said, "They have departed from here, for I have heard them saying, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went afar after his brothers and founded them into Dothan. Then when they saw him afar off, even before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. Then they said to one another, "Look, the dreamer is coming. Come, therefore let us now kill him and cast him into the pit, and we shall say, 'Some wild beast has devoured him.' We shall see what will become of his dreams." But Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands, and said, "Let us not kill him." And Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood, but cast him into the pit, which is in the wilderness, and do not lay a hand on him, that he might deliver him out of their hands, and bring him back to his father." So it had come to pass, when Joseph had come to his brothers, that they stripped Joseph of his tunic of many colors that was on him. Then they took him and casted him into the pit, and the pit was empty, there was no water in it. And They sat down to eat a meal. Then they lifted their eyes and looked, and there was company of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels bearing spices, balm, and myrrh, on their way to carry them down to Egypt. So Jonah said to his brother, "What profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh." And his brothers listened. Then the Ishmaelites then the Midianite traders passed by, so the brothers pulled Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver, and they took Joseph to Egypt. Then Reuben returned to the pit, and indeed Joseph was not into the pit, and he tore his clothes, and he returned to his brother and said, "The lad is no more, and I, where shall I go?" So they took Joseph's tunic and killed a kid of goats, and dipped the tunic into the blood. Then they set the tunic off many colors, and they brought it to their father and said, "We have found this. Do you know whether it is your son's tunic or not?" And he recognized it and said, "It is my son's tunic. A wild beast has devoured him. Without doubt Joseph is torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his clothes and put sackcloth on his waist and mourned for his son many days, and all of his sons and all of his daughters arose to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted, and he said, "For I shall go down into the grave into my son in mourning." Thus his father wept from him. Now the Midianites had sold him into Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of the guard, captain of the guard. Jonah and Tamar, chapter 38. It had come to pass at this time that Jonah departed from his brother and visited the certain Adullamite, whose name is Hera, and Jonah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name is Shoha, and he married her and went into her, so that she conceived and bore a son, and he called his name Ur. She conceived again and bore a son, and she called his name Onan, and she conceived again and bore a son, and called his name Shilha. He was a cherub, or Cherub is Chezib, when she bore him. Then Jonah took a wife of Ur, her firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Ur, Jonah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord killed him. And Jonah said to Anna, "Go into your brother's wife and marry her, and raise up an heir to your brother." And Anna knew that the heir would not be his, and it had come to pass when he went into his brother's wife that he emanated onto the ground, lest he should give an heir to his brother. And the thing which he did displeased the Lord, and therefore he killed him also. Then Jonah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, "Remain a widow in your father's house till my son Shilha is grown." For he said, lest he also die like his brother. And Tamar went and dwelt into her father's house. Now in the process of a time, the daughter of Shilha, Jonah's wife, died, and Jonah was comforted and went up to his sheep shearers at Timnah, and he and his friends Harel and Adullamite. And it was told Tamar, saying, "Look, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep." So she took off her widow's garment, covered herself with a veil, and wrapped herself and sat into the open place which was on the way to Timnah. For she saw that Shilha was grown, and she was not given to him as a wife. Then Jonah saw her. He thought she was a harlot because she had covered her face. Then he turned to her by the way and said, "Please let me come in to you." For he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. So she said, "What will you give me, that you may come in to me?" And he said, "I will send you a young goat from my flock." So she said, "Will you give me a pledge till you send it?" Then he said, "What pledge shall I give you?" So she said, "Your signet, and your cord, and your staff, that is your hand." Then he gave them to her, and went into her, and she conceived by him. So she rose and went away, and laid aside her veil, and put on the garment of her widowhood. And Jonah sent the young goat by the hand of his friend, the Alamite, to receive his pledge from the woman's hand, but he did not find her. Then he asked the men of that place, saying, "Where is the harlot who was open at the road aside?" And they said, "There was no harlot in this place." So he returned to Jonah and said, "I cannot find her also, the man of this place. And there was no harlot into this place." Then Jonah said, "Let her take them, and let herself, lest we be shamed, for I have sent a young goat, and you have not found her." And it has come to pass about 3 months after that Jonah was told, saying, "Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has played the harlot, for the more she is with child by harlotry." So Jonah said, "Bring her out, and let her be burned." Then she was brought out. She sent to her father-in-law, saying, "Buy this man to whom these belong, and I am with child." And she said, "Please determine whose these are, the signet, the cord, and the staff." So Jonah acknowledged them and said, "She has been more righteous than I, because I did not give her the Shilha, my son, and he never knew her again." Now it had come to pass at this time for giving birth, that, behold, twins were in her womb. And so it was, when she was giving birth, that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took a scarlet thread and bound it on his hand, saying, "This one come out first." Then it had happened, as he had drew back his hand, and his brother had come out unexpectedly. And she said, "How did this you break through, this breach be upon you?" Therefore his name was called Perez, Perez. Afterwards his brother came out with hand the scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerah. 39. Joseph is slave in Egypt. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of the Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, brought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a successful man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And his master saw the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all he did prosper in his hand. So Joseph found favor into the sight, and served him. Then he had made him overseer of the house, and all of that he had, and put under his authority. So it was from the time that he had made him overseer of his house and all that he had, and that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house from Joseph's sake, and the blessing of the Lord was on all that he had into the house and in the field. Thus he had left all that he had into Joseph's hand, and he did not know that he had accepted except for the bread which he had eaten. Who Joseph was handsome. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance, and it had come to pass after these things that his master's wife cast longing eyes on Joseph, and she said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Look, my master does not know that it is with me in this house, and that he has commanded all that he has in my hand to my hand. There is no one greater in his house than I, nor has he kept back anything from me, but you, because you are his wife. Now, then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" So it was, as she had spoken to Joseph, day by day, that he did not heed her to lie with her or to be with her. But it had happened after this time, when Joseph went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of this house was inside, that she caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled and ran outside. And so it was, when she saw that he had left his garment into her hand and fled outside, that she called to the men of her house and spoke to them, saying, See, he has brought into us a Hebrew to mock us. He had come into me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And it had happened, when he heard that I left my voice and cried out, that he had left his garment with me and fled and went outside. So she kept his garment and with her, and until his master had come home. Then she had spoken to him with words like these, saying, "This Hebrew servant whom you brought into us have come into me to mock me." So it had happened, as I lifted my voice and cried out, that he had left his garment with me and fled outside. So it was, when his master heard these words which his wife spoken to him, saying, "Your servant did to me after this manner," that his anger was aroused. Then Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in the prison. But the Lord was with Joseph, and showed him mercy, and he had given him favor into the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand and all the prisoners who were in the prison, whatever they did, there it was his doing. The keeper of the prisoner did not look into anything that was under Joseph's authority, because of the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made him prosper. Chapter 40. The prisoner's dream. It had come to pass after these things, that the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt offered their lord the king of Egypt, and Potiphar was angry with the two officers and chief butler and the chief baker. So he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard in the prison, the place where Joseph was confined. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them and the servant, and served them. So they were in custody for a while. Then the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined into the prison, had a dream, both of them, each man's dream in one night, and each man's dream with his own interpretation. And Joseph came to them in the morning, and looked at them, and saw that they were sad. So he asked Pharaoh's officer who were with him in the custody of the Lord's house, saying, "Why do you look so sad today?" And they said to him, "We each had a dream, and there is no interpreter of it." So Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell them to me, please." Then the chief butler told his dream to Joseph and said to him, "Behold, in the dream is a vine was before me, and in the vine were 3 branches, and it was as though it budded. Its blossoms shot forth, and its clusters brought forth the ripe grapes. Then Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup and placed the cup into Pharaoh's hand." And Joseph said to him, "This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Now within 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your hand and restore you to your place, and you will put Pharaoh's cup into his hand according to his former manner when you were his butler. But remember me when it is well with you, and please show kindness to me. Make mention of me to Pharaoh, and get me out of this house. For indeed I was stolen away from the land of the Hebrews, and also I have done nothing here that they should put me into this dungeon." Then the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, so he said to Joseph, I also was in my dream, and there were 3 white baskets on my head. In the uppermost basket were all kinds of baked goods in Pharaoh's, and the birds ate them out of the basket on my head. So Joseph answered and said, "This is the interpretation of it. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days Pharaoh will lift off your head and from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh from you." Now it has come to pass on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he had made a feast for all of his servants, and he lifted up the hand of the chief butler and of the chief baker among his servants. Then he restored the chief butler to his butlership again, and he had placed a cup into Pharaoh's hand, but he hanged the chief baker as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. Chapter 41. Pharaoh's dream. Then it had come to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh had a dream, and behold, he had stood by the river. Suddenly there came up out of the river 7 cows, fine looking and fat, and they fed in the meadow. Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them out of the river, ugly and giant, and stood by the other cows onto the bank of the river. And the ugly and giant cows ate up the 7 fine looking and fat cows. So Pharaoh awoke, and he slept and dreamt a second time, and suddenly 7 heads of grain came up on one stalk, plump and good. Then behold, 7 thin heads, blighted by the east wind, spread up after them, and the 7 thin heads devoured the 7 plump and full heads. So Pharaoh awoke, and indeed it was a dream. Now it had come to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he had sent and called for all of the magicians in Egypt, and all its wise men. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was no one who could interpretate them for Pharaoh. Then the chief butler spoke to Pharaoh and said, saying, I remember my fault this day. Then Pharaoh was angry when his servant and put me into custody into the house of the captain of the guard, both me and the chief baker. We each had a dream in one night, and he and I, each of us, dreamt according to his interpretation of his own dream. Now there was a young Hebrew man with us there, a servant of the captain of the guard, and we told him, and he interpreted our dream for us to each man. He interpreted according to his own dream, and it had come to pass just as he interpreted for us, so it happened. He restored me to my office, and he hung him. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him quickly out of the dungeon, and he had changed his clothes, and came to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. But I have heard it said of you that you can understand a dream to interpret it. So Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh an answer, of peace. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, Behold, in my dream I stood on the bank of the river. Suddenly 7 cows came up out of the river, fine looking and fat, and they fed into the meadow. Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly and giant, such ugliness as I have never seen in all of the land of Egypt. And the giant and ugly cows ate up all the first 7 that fat cows. Then they had eaten them up. No one would have known that they had eaten them, for they were just as ugly as the beginning. So I awoke also, and I saw in my dream, and suddenly 7 heads came up onto the stalk, full and good. Then behold, 7 heads, withered, thin, and blighted by the east wind, spreading up after them, and the thin heads devoured the 7 good heads. So I told this to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, The dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads are 7 years of. The dreams are one, and the 7 thin and ugly cows which come up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty heads, blighted to the east wind, are 7 years of famine. This is the thing which I have spoken to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. Indeed, 7 years of great plenty will come throughout all the land of Egypt, but after them 7 years of famine will arise. And all of the plenty will be forgotten into the land of Egypt, and all the famine will be pollited into the land, so that the plenty will not be known into the land, because of the famine following from it will be very severe. And the dream was repeated to Pharaoh twice, because the thing in establishing to God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Now therefore let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land to collect 1/5 of the produce of the land to Egypt into the 7 plentiful years, and let them gather all the food of those good years that are coming, and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities, and then that food shall be as a reserve for the land for the 7 years of famine which shall be into the land of Egypt, that the land may not prosper during the famine. Joseph rises in power. So that advance was good into the eyes of Pharaoh, and it in the eyes of all of his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, Can we find such one as this, a man whom is the Spirit of God? When Pharaoh said to Joseph, Inasmuch as God has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all that my people shall be rulers according to your word. Only in regard to the throne will I be great than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, See that I have set you over all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh looked at his signet ring off. Then Pharaoh took a signet ring off. He handed and put it onto Joseph's hand, and clothed him with garments of fine linen, and put a gold chain around his neck. And he had him ride into the second chariot which he had, and they cried out before him, bowed the knee. So he had set him over the land of Egypt. Pharaoh also said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without consent no man may lift his hand or foot into the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphenath Paneah, Zaphnath Paaneah, and he had given him as a wife Asenath, Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. So Joseph went out over to the land of Egypt. So Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the lands of Egypt. Now in the 7th plentiful years the ground brought forth abundancy, so he gathered up all the food of the 7th years which were into the land of Egypt, and laid up the food into the cities, and laid up in every city of food into the fields which surrounded them. Joseph gathered every much grain as the sand of the sea, until he stopped counting, for it was measurable. And Joseph said, were born 2 sons before the years of famine come, whom Asenath, Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore him. Joseph called his name the firstborn Manasseh, for God has made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the name of the second son was Ephraim, for God has caused me to be fruitful into the land of my affliction. Then the 7 years of plenty which were into the land of Egypt ended, and the 7 years of famine began to come, as Joseph had said. The famine was into all the land, but in all the land of Egypt was bread. So when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried out to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, Go to Joseph, whatever he says to you, do. And the famine was over all the faces of the earth. And Joseph opened all of the storehouse and sold to the Egyptians, and the famine becomes severe in the land of Egypt. So all the countries came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain, because the famine was severe in all the land. Chapter 42. Joseph's brothers got to Egypt. Then when Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt, Jacob said to his son, "Why do you look at one another?" And he said, "Indeed, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt, so go down to this place and buy for us there, that we may live and not die." So Joseph's 10 brothers went down and bought grain into Egypt, but Jacob did not send Joseph's brothers and Benjamin with him, his brothers, for he said, lest some calamity befall him. And the son of Israel went to buy grain. Am I reading that right? Okay. Lest some calamity fall him, and the sons of Israel went to buy some grain among those who journeyed from the famine was into the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was governor over all the land, and it was he who had sold to all the people into the land. And Joseph's brothers come and bowed down before him with their faces to the earth. Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he acted as a stranger to them and spoke rudely to them. Then he said to them, "Where do you come from?" And they said, "From the land of Canaan, to buy food." So Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. Then Joseph remembered the dreams which he had dreamt about them, and said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land." And they had said to him, "No, Lord, my Lord, but we servants have come to buy food, and we are all one man's sons. We are honest men. Your servants are not spies." But he had said to them, "No, but you have come to see the nakedness of the land." And they said, "Your servants are 12 brothers, and the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And in fact, the youngest is with our father today, and one is no more." But Joseph said to them, "It is as I have spoken to you, saying, you are spies. In this manner you shall be tested. By the life of Pharaoh, you shall not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you, and let him bring your brothers, and you shall be kept in prison, that your words may be tested, to see whether there is any truth into you, or else by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies." So he had put them all together into prison 3 days. Then Joseph said to them, "The third day, do this and live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers be confined to your prison's house. But you go and carry again grain for the famine of your house, and bring your youngest brother to me, so your word will be verified, and you shall not die." And they did so. Then they said to one another, "We are truly guilty concerning our brother. We are truly guilty, Guilty, concerning our brother. For we saw the anguish of his soul when he pledged with us, and we would not hear. Therefore this distress has come upon us." And Reuben answered them, saying, Did I not speak to you, saying, Do not sin against the boy? And you would not listen. Therefore, behold, his blood is now required of us. But they did not know that Joseph understood them, for he spoke to them through an interpreter, and he turned himself away from them and wept. They then he returned to them again and talked with them, and he took Simeon from them and bounded him before their eyes. The brothers returned to Canaan. Then Joseph gave a command to fill their sacks with grain, to restore every man's money to his sacks, and to give them provisions for the journey. Thus he did for them. So they loaded their donkeys with the grain and departed from there. But as one of them opened his sacks to give his donkey feed at this encampment, he saw his money, and there it was in the mouth of his sack. So he said to his brothers, My money has been restored, and therefore it is in my sack. Then their hearts failed them, and they were afraid, saying to one another, What is this that God has done to us? Then they went to Jacob their father in the land of Canaan, and told him all that had happened to them, saying, The man who is Lord of the land spoke rudely to us, and took us for spies into the country. But we said to him, We are honest men. We are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our fathers. One is no more, and the youngest is with our father this day in the land of Canaan. Then the man, the Lord of our country, and said to us, By this I know now that you are honest men, leaving one of your brothers here with me, taking food for the famine of your household, and be gone, and bring your youngest brother to me, so that I shall know that you are not spies, but that you are honest men, and I will grant your brothers to you, and you may trade into the land. Then it had happened as they had emptied their sacks, the Surspirly, I don't know this word, Surprisingly, Surspirly, each man's boundly of money was in his sack. And when they and their father saw that the bundles of money, they were afraid. And Jacob their father said to them, You have bereaved me. Joseph is no more, Simeon is no more, and you want to take Benjamin. All these things are against me. Then Reuben spoke to his father, saying, Kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you. But he said, My son shall not go down with you, for his brothers is dead, and he is left alone. If any calamity should befall him along the way in which you go, then you should bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave. Chapter 43. Joseph's brothers return with Benjamin. Now the famine was severe into the land, and it had come to pass, when they had eaten up the grain which he had brought from Egypt, that their fathers said to them, Go back, buy us a little food. But Jonah spoke to him, saying, The man solemnly warned us, saying, You shall not see my face unless your brothers is with you. If you send your brother with us, we will go down to buy food you food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the men said to us, you shall not see my face unless your brothers is with you. And Israel said, why did you deal so wrongfully with me as to tell the men whether you had still another brother? But they said, the men asked us promptly about ourselves and our family, saying, it is your father still alive? Have you another brother? And we told him accordingly to these words. Could we possibly have known that he would say, bring your brother down? Then Joseph said to Israel his father, send the lad with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you, and also your little ones. And I myself will be surety for him. From my hand you shall require him, and if I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. For if we had not lingered, surely by now we could have returned his second time. And their fathers Israel said to them, if it must be so, then do this. Take some of the best fruit of the land into your vessel, and carry down a present from the man, a little balm and a little honey, spices and myrrh, pistachio nuts and almonds, and take double money into your hand, and take back in your hand the money that was returned into the mouth of the sack. Perhaps it was an oversight. And take your brothers also, and arise and go back to the men, and may God Almighty give you mercy before the man, that he may release your other brothers, and Benjamin. If I am bereaved, I am bereaved. So the men took that what he had presented, and Benjamin, and they took double money into their hand, and arose and went down into Egypt, and they stood before Joseph. And then Joseph saw Benjamin with them. He said the steward of his house, he said to the steward of the house, take these men to my home, and slaughter an animal, and make ready for these men, and will dine with me at noon. Then the man did as Joseph ordered, and the men brought the men into Joseph's house. And now the men were afraid, because they were brought into Joseph's house, and they said, it is because of the money which has returned to our sacks, and the first time that we brought in, so that he had make a case against us, and size us to take us as slaves with our donkeys. Then they drew near to the steward of Joseph's house, and they talked with him at the door of this house, and said, our sir, O sir, we indeed come down to the first time to buy food, but it has happened when we have come into the encampment that we opened our sacks, and there which men's money was into the mouth of each of his sacks. Our money is full in weight, and so that we have brought into our sacks our own hand, and we have brought down other money into the hand of to buy food, and we did not know who put our money into our sacks. But he said, peace be with you, and do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has given you treasures of your sacks, and I have your money. Then he had brought Simeon out to them. So the men had brought the men into Joseph's house, and given them water, and they washed their feet, and he had given their donkeys feed. And then they had the presents ready for Joseph coming at noon, for they had what they would eat bread there. So they heard that they would eat bread there. And then Joseph came to home, And they brought him the presents which was in their hand into the house, and bowed down before him unto the earth. Then he had asked them about their well-being, and said, Is your father well? The old man of whom spoke, is he still alive? And they answered, Your servant our father is good, in good health. He is still alive. And they bowed their head down and prostrated themselves. Then he lifted his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, Is this your brother, your younger brother, of whom you have spoken to me? And he is said, God be with gracious to you, my son. Now his heart yearned for his brother. So Joseph made haste and sought somewhere to weep, and he went into the chamber and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out, and he restrained himself and said, Serve the bread. So they set him a place by himself, and then by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat food with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination of the Egyptians. And they sat before him, and the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked as astonishment at one another. Then he took servings to them from before him. What Benjamin served was 5 times as much as any others. So they drank and were merry with him. 44. Joseph's cup. And he commanded the stewards of his house, saying, Fill this man's sack with food, as much as they can carry, and put each man's money into the mouth of their sack. Also put a cup, the silver cup, into the mouth of the sack of the youngest, and his grain money. So he did according to the word of Joseph's hand spoke. As soon as the morning dawned, the men were sent away, they and their donkeys. When they had gone out of the city and were not yet afar off, Joseph said to his steward, Get up, follow the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, Why have you repaid evil for good? Is not this the one of my Lord's drinks, and with which he indeed practices divination? You have done an evil so doing. So he overtook them, and he spoke to them these same words. And they said to him, Why does the Lord say these words? Far be it from us that your servants should do such a thing. Look, we brought back to you from the land of Canaan, and the money which we found into the mouth of our sacks. How then could we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? With whoever of your servants is found, let him die, and we also will be my Lord's slaves. And he had said, Now also let it be according to your words. He with whom it is found shall be my slaves, and you shall be blameless. Then each man speedily let down his sacks to the ground, and each opened his sacks. So he had searched. He began with the oldest and left off with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothes, and each man laid his donkeys, returned to the city. So Jonah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, and he was still there, and they fell before him onto the ground. And Joseph said to them, What indeed is this you have done? Did you not know that such a man as I can certainly practice divination. Then Jonah said, "What shall we say to the Lord? That shall we speak, or who can we clear ourselves? God has found out the iniquities of our servants, that there we are, my Lord's slaves, both we and he also with whom the cup was found." But he said, "Far be it from me that I should do so." Then the man in whose hand the cup was found, he should be my slave, and as for you, go up in peace unto your father. Jonah intercedes for Benjamin. Now Jonah come near to him and said, "O my Lord, please let my servant speak a word into my Lord's hearing, and do not let your anger burn against your servant. For you are even like Pharaoh. My Lord asked my servant, saying, Have you a father or a brother? And we said to my Lord, We have a father, an old man, and a child of his old age, who is young. His brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servant, Bring him down to me, that I might set my eyes on him. And we had said to the Lord, The lad cannot leave his father, or if he should leave his father would die. But you say to your servant, Unless your youngest brother has come down with you, you shall see my face no more. So it was when we went up to your servant my father, that we told him the word of the Lord, of my Lord. And our father said, Go back and buy us a little food. But we said, We cannot go down if our youngest brother is with us. Then we will go down, for we may not see the man's face unless your youngest brother is with us. Then your servant my father said to us, You know that my wife bore me 2 sons, and the one went out from me, and I said, Surely he is torn to pieces. And I have not seen him since. But if you take this one also from me, and a calamity befalls him, you shall bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave. Now therefore, when I have come to your servant my father, and he had laid it not with us, since his life is bound up into the lad's life, it will happen, then he had sees that the lad is not with us, that he will die. So your servant will bring down the gray hair of your servant, of our father, with sorrow to the grave for your servant, because surely for the lad is my father's saying, and if I do not bring him back to you, then I shall bear the blame before my father forever. Now, therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the lad as a slave into the Lord, and let the lad go up with his brothers. For now shall I go up to my father, and if the lad is not with me, lest perhaps I see the evil and that would come upon my father. Joseph revealed to his brothers. 45. Then Joseph could not restrain himself before all those who had stood by him, and he had cried out, making everyone go out from me. So no one stood with him, while Joseph made himself known to his brothers, and he had wept out loud, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard it. Then Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph, does not my father still live? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed into his presence, and Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come near to me," so that they came near. And then he said, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. But now do not therefore be grieved over my anger with yourselves, because you sold me here. For God has sent me before you to perceive life. For this 2 years the famine had been into the land, and there are still 5 years into which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. And God sent me before you into the preserve and prosperity for you into the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you who sent me here, but God, and he has made me a father of Pharaoh, and the Lord of his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to your father and say to him, Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt, and come down to me. Do not tarry. You shall dwell into the land of Goshen, and you shall be near to me, and you and your children and your children's children, and your flocks and your herds, and all that you have. There I will provide for you, lest you and your household and all that you have come to poverty. For there are still 5 years of famine, and behold, your eyes and your eyes of my brothers Benjamin see that it is my mouth that speaks to you. So you shall tell my father of all my glory of Egypt, and of all that you have seen, and you shall hurry and bring my father down here. Then he fell on his brother's Benjamin's neck and wept. And Benjamin wept on his neck. Moreover, he kissed all of his brothers and wept over them. And after that, his brothers talked with him. Now the report of it was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph's brothers have come. So it pleased Pharaoh and his servants well. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, saying to his brothers, Do this lad your animals, and you depart, go into the land of Canaan. Bring your father and your household, and come to me, and I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you will eat the fat of the land. Now you are commanded to do this. Take carts out of the land of Egypt for your little ones and your wives. Bring your father and come also. Do not be concerned about your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. Then the son of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them carts according to the command of Pharaoh, and he had given them providence of the journey, and he had given all of them to each of men, each of garments. But to Benjamin he had given 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments. And he sent to his father these things: 10 donkeys loads with the good things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and food of his father for the journey. So he had sent his brother away, and they departed, and he said to them, See that you do not come troubled along the way. Then they went up out of Egypt and came to the land of Canaan, to Jacob their father. And they had told him, saying, Joseph is still alive, and he is governed over all the land of Egypt. And Jacob's heart stood still, because he did not believe them. But then they told him all which Joseph had said to them. And then he saw that the cart which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob, their father, revived. Then Israel said, It is enough. Joseph, my son, is still alive, and I will go down, and I will go and see him before I die. 46. Jacob's journey to Egypt. So Israel took his journey with all that he had, and came to Beersheba, and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. Then God spoke to Israel in the vision of the night, and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here I am. So he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not fear to go down to Egypt, for I'll make for you a great nation there, and I will go down with you into Egypt. And I will also surely bring you up again, and Joseph will put his hand onto your eyes. Then Jacob arose from Beersheba, and the son of Israel carried their father Jacob, their little ones, and their wives into their cart, which Pharaoh had sent into the carrying him. So they took their livestock and their goods which they had acquired into the land of Canaan, and went into Egypt. And Jacob and all of his descendants with him, his sons and his sons' sons, and his daughters and his sons' daughters, and all of his descendants he had brought with him to Egypt. Now these were the names of the children of Israel, Jacob and his sons, who went to Egypt. Reuben was Jacob's firstborn, and the son of Reuben was Hanok, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. The sons of Simeon were Jamal, Jamin, Ohad, Jachian, Zohar, and Shalhu. The sons of the Canaanite woman, the son of Levi, were Gershon, Kohath, and Merah. The sons of Jonah were Onan, Shelha, Perez, and Zerah. But and Onan died in the land of Canaan. The sons of Perez there were Haran and Hamel. The sons of Israel, Issachar, were Tola, Polvan, Jom, and Simron. The sons of Zebulun, their Syrian, Elon, and Jalhel. These were the sons of the Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob in Paddan Aram, with his daughters of Dan, and all of the Persians. His sons and his sons' daughters were 33. The sons of Gad were Zilpah, Hagag, Shachun, Ezbon, Era, Arad, and Ariel. The sons of Asher were Jimha, Ishua, Isu, Birha, and Shira, Sarah their sister. And the son of Birha were Heber and Melachah. These were the sons of Zilpah, whom Laban gave to Leah his daughter, and these were she bore to Jacob 16 per person. The sons of Rachel, Jacob's wife, were Joseph, Benjamin, and Joseph into the land of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim, whose Anasseh, the daughters of Potiphar, priest of On, bore him. The sons of Benjamin were Belha, Becher, Ashrebel, Gira, Naaman, Rosa, or Rosia, Mophiam, Hippiam, and Erd. These were the sons of Rachel who were born to Jacob, 14 persons in all. The sons of Dan was Heshiam, the son of Naphtali were Jezhel, Guna, Jezer, and Shilhim. These were the sons of Bilhah, whom Laban gave to Rachel, his daughter, and she bore these to Jacob, 7 persons in all. All the persons who went with Jacob into Egypt, who had come from the body, besides Jacob's sons' wives, were 66 persons in all. And the sons of Joseph who were born to him in Egypt were 2 persons, and all the persons of the house of Jacob who went into Egypt were 70. Jacob settled in Goshen. Then he had sent Jonah before him to Joseph to point out before him the way to Goshen, and they have come to the land of Goshen. The Joseph made ready in the chariot and went up to Goshen to meet his father. Israel in his presence himself to him, and fell onto his neck, and wept on his neck a good while. And Israel said to Joseph, Now let me die, since I have seen your face, because you are still alive. Then Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, I will go up and tell Pharaoh, and say to him, My brothers and those of my father's house who were in my land of Canaan have come to me. And the men were shepherds of their occupation has been in the field of livestock, and they have brought their flocks, their herds, and all that they have. So it shall be, where Pharaoh calls you and says, What is your occupation? That you shall say, Your servant's occupation has been with livestock from your youth even till now, both we and also your fathers, that you may dwell in the land of Goshen. For every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians. Then Joseph went and told Pharaoh, and said, My father and my brothers, their livestock is their herds, and all that they possess have come to the land of Canaan, and indeed they are into the land of Goshen. And he told 5 men from among the brothers, and presented them to Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh said to his brothers, That what is your occupation? And they said to Pharaoh, Your servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers. And they said to Pharaoh, We have come to dwell into the land, because of your servants have not pasture for their livestock, for their famine is severe into the land of Canaan. Now therefore, please let your servant dwell into the land of Goshen. Then Pharaoh spoke to Joseph, saying, Your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Have your fathers and your brothers dwell into the best of the land. Let them dwell in the land of Goshen. And if you know any competent men among them, then make them chief herdsmen over my livestock. Then Joseph brought in his father Jacob, and set him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Jacob, Now, how old are you? And Jacob said to Pharaoh, The days of the years of My pilgrimage are 130 years. Few and evil have been into the day of the years of my life, and they have not attended to the day of the years of my life, of my father in the land of their pilgrimage. So Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from before Pharaoh. And Joseph situated his father and his brothers and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, into the land, in the best of the land, into the land of Ramos, as Pharaoh had commanded. Then Joseph provided his father, his brothers, and all of his father's household with bread according to the number in their families. Joseph dealt with the famine. Now there was no bread into the land, for the famine was very severe, so that the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished because of the famine. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found into the land of Egypt and into the land of Canaan, and for the grain which they had brought. And Joseph brought into the money into Pharaoh's hand. So then the money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, and all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us bread, for why should we die into your presence? For the money has failed." And Joseph said, "Give your livestock, and I will give you bread, for your livestock the money is gone." So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for the horses, the flocks, and the cattle of the herd, and for the donkeys. Thus he fed them with the bread in exchange for all of their livestock of the year. Then that year had ended, they have come to him to the next year and said to him, "We will not hide from the Lord that our money is gone. My Lord also has our herds and livestock. There is nothing left in the sight of our Lord but our bodies and our lands. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land. We will be servants of Pharaoh. Give us feed, that we may live and not die, that the land may not be desolated." Then Joseph brought all of the land to Egypt to Pharaoh, and every man of the Egyptians sold his field, because of the famine was severe upon them. So the land became Pharaoh's, and as for the people, he moved them into the cities from one end to a borders of Egypt, and to the other end. Only the land of the priest he did not buy from the presence had rationed allowed to them by Pharaoh, and they ate their rations which Pharaoh had given to them before. They did not sell their land. Then Joseph said to the people, "Indeed, I have brought you and your land this day from Pharaoh, looking here into the seed for you, and you shall sow the land, and it shall come to pass in the harvest that you shall give 1/5 of Pharaoh's 4/5 shall be of your own, as seed for the field, and for your food, for those of your household, and as for food for your little ones." So they said, "You have saved our lives. Let us find favor into the sight of my Lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants." And Joseph made a law over the land of Egypt unto the day that Pharaoh should have 1/5, except for the land of the priests only, which did not become Pharaoh's. Joseph vowed to Jacob, So Israel dwelt into the land of Egypt in the country of Goshen, and they had possessions there, and grew and multiplied exceedingly. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 70 years. So the length of Jacob's life was 140 years. When the time drew near that Israel must die, he called his son Joseph, and said to him, "Now, if I have found favor in your sight, please put your hand under my thigh, and deal kindly and eternally and truly with me. Please do not bury me in Egypt, but let me lie with my fathers. You shall come and carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burial place." And he had said, "I will do as you have said." Then he had said, "Swear to me." And he swore to him. So Israel bowed himself on the head of the bed. Chapter 48. Jacob's blessed Joseph's son. Now it had come to pass after this thing that Joseph was told, "Indeed, your father is sick." And he took with him, and he talked with him, with his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And Jacob was told, "Look, your son Joseph is coming to you." And Israel strengthened himself and sat up and on the bed. Then Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan, and blessed me, and said to me, Behold, I will make you a fruitful, multiply you, and I will make you a multiply of people, and give your land to your descendants after you as an everlasting possession. And now your two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born to you into the land of Egypt before I have come to you in Egypt, are mine. As Reuben and Simeon, they shall be mine, and your offspring whom you beget after them shall be yours, and they will be called the name of their brothers in their inheritance. But as for me, when I have come from Padian, Rachel died besides me into the land of Canaan on the way, when there was but a little descendants to go into Ethrath, and I buried her there unto the way of Ethrath, that is Bethlehem. Then Israel saw Joseph's son and said, Who are these? Joseph said to his father, These are my sons whom God has given me into this place. And he had said, Please bring them to me, and I will bless them. Now the eyes of Israel were dim and with age, so that he could not see. Then Joseph brought them near to him, and he had kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, I had not enough to see your face, but in fact God has also shown me your offspring. So Joseph brought them from beside his knee, and he bowed down with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim with his right hand towards Israel's left hand, and Manasseh with his left hand towards Israel's right hand, and brought them near to him. Then Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on Ephraim's head, who was the younger, and his left hand onto Manasseh's head, guiding his hand knowingly. From Manasseh was the firstborn, and he blessed Joseph and said, God before whom my father Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has fed me, F-E-D me, all my life, long to this day, and the angel who has redeemed me from all evil. Blessed the lads, let my name be named upon them, and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into their multitudes into the midst of the earth. Now then Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand onto the head of Ephraim. It displeased him, so he took hold of his father's hand and removed it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, Not so, my father, for this one is the firstborn, but your right hand on his head. But his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. But truly, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations. So he blessed them that day, saying, By you, Israel, will bless, saying, May God make you as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And thus he had set Ephraim before Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, Behold, I am dying, but God will be with you, and bring you back to the land of your fathers. Moreover, I have given to you one portion above your brothers, which I have took from the hand of the Amorite, which with my sword and my bow. Chapter 49. Jacob last words unto his son. And Jacob called his son and said, Gather together, that I might tell you what shall befall you into the last day. Gather together and hear, you sons of Jacob, and listen to Israel your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, the excellence of your dignity, and the excellence of your power. Unestablished as water, you shall not excel, because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it. He went up to my couch. Simeon and Levi, our brothers, instruments of cruelty are in their dwelling place. Let not my soul enter their council. Let not my honor be united to their assembly. For in their anger they slew women, and in their strife will be hamstrings and ox. Cursed be it their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them into Jacob, and scatter them into Israel. Jonah, you are he whom your brother shall praise. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies, and your father's children shall bow down before you. Jonah is a lion of weeps. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He bows down, he lies down as a lion, and as a lion, who shall arouse him? The serpent shall not depart from Jonah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Silha comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the people, binding his donkeys to the vine, and his donkeys' colts to the chosen vine. He washes his garments into the wine, and his clothes into the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. Zildad shall dwell in my heaven. Zildad shall dwell by the heaven of the sea. He shall become a haven for ships, and his brother shall adorn Sidon. Issachar is strong donkey, lying down between two burdens. He saw the rest. He saw that the rest was good, and that the land was pleasant. He had bowed his shoulder to bear a burden and become a hand of slaves. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent by the way, a viper by the path, that bites the horse's heel, so that its rider shall fall backwards. And I have waited for the Lord, for your salvation, O Lord. Gad, a troop shall trample upon him, and he shall triumph at last. Bered, bread from Asher shall be rich, and he shall yield royal dynasties. Naphtali is a deer let loose. He uses beautiful words. Joseph is a fruitful bow by a wall. His branches run over all the walls. The archer has bitterly grieved him. Shout at him and hate him, but his bow remained in strength, and the arm of his hands were made strong by the hand of the mighty God of Jacob. From there is shepherd, the stone of Israel, by the God of your father whom will help you, and by the Almighty who will bless you, will bless of heaven above, bless of the deep that lies beneath, bless of the breast and of the womb, the blessing of your father, and have excelled of the blessing of my ancestors, up to the utmost abounding of the everlasting hill. They shall be on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of him who was separate from his brothers. Benjamin and his revenants, wolves. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. All this are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what the Father has spoken to them, and he blessed them. He blessed each one according to his own blessing. Jacob's death and burial. Then he charged them and said to them, I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers into the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of the Machpelah, which is in before Mamre, into the land of Canaan, which Abraham brought with the field of Ephraim and Hittite as the possession for a burial place. There the burial of Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife, and there I bury Leah. The field and the cave that is there were purchased from the sons of Heth. And then Jacob had finished commanding his sons. He drew his feet up into the bed and breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. Chapter 50. Then Joseph fell onto his face and wept over him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants and physicians to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. 40 days were required from him, and from each are the days required for those who are embalmed. And the Egyptians mortified for him 70 days. the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. Now then, the days of the mourning were past, and Joseph spoke to the household of Pharaoh, saying, If now I have found favor into your eyes, please speak in the hearing of Pharaoh, saying, My father made me swear, saying, Behold, I am dying into my grave, which I dug for myself into the land of Canaan. There you shall bury me now. Therefore, please let me go up and bury my father, and I will come back. And Pharaoh said, Go up and bury your father, as he had made you swear. So Joseph went up and buried his father, and with him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, and the elders of his household, and all of the elders of the land of Egypt, as well as all the household of Joseph, his brothers, and his father's house. Only their little ones and their flocks and their herds they left into the land of Goshen, and all they went up with him, both chariots and horsemen, and it was a very great gathering. Then they came to the threshing floor at Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, and they mourned there with a great and very solemn lamentation. He observed 7 days of mourning for his father, and then the inhabitants of the land of Canaanites saw that the mourning at the threshing floor of Aldad. They said, This is deep mourning of the Egyptians. Therefore its name was called Abel Mizraim, which is beyond the Jordan. So his sons did for him just as he had commanded them. For his sons carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him into the cave at the field of Machpelah before Marie, which Abraham brought with the field of the Ephron and the Hittite as property of the burial place. And after he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt, he and his brothers and all who went up with him to bury his father. Then Joseph's brother saw that their father was dead. They said, Perhaps Joseph will hate us and many actually repay us for the evil which we did to him. So they sent messengers to Joseph, saying, Before your father died, he commanded, saying, Thus you shall say to Joseph, I beget you. Please forgive the trespasses of your brothers and their sin, for they did evil to you. Now please forgive the trespasses of the servants of God of your father. And Joseph wept. Then they spoke to him. Then his brothers also went and fell down before his face. And they said, Behold, we are your servant. Joseph said to them, Do not be afraid, for I am in the place of God. But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people alive. Now therefore do not be afraid, and I will provide for you and your little ones. And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. Death of Joseph. So Joseph dwelt in Egypt, he and his father's household, and Joseph lived 110 years. Joseph saw Ephraim's children to the third generation, and the children of Machir, Machir, the sons of Manasseh, were also brought up into Joseph's knee. And Joseph said to his brethren, I am dying, but God will surely visit you and bring you out of this land of which he has swore to Abraham and Isaac and the Jacob. Then Joseph took an oath from the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. So Joseph died, being 110 years old, and then embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. And that's the end of Genesis from New King James Version.